Hello and welcome to the Footsteps Scene Designer Pro setup video. In this video, we're going to go over the steps required to set up Footsteps Scene Designer Pro in a brand new project. So let's do that. I'm going to make a demo project. Maybe we'll call it Footsteps Demo Project. And we're going to create that project in Unity 5. And I am going to now import the package. I have a custom package, and it's right here. And I'm going to click Import to suck in all the various assets we need. And we really don't need a lot. The project's bigger than it should be, only because I included some demo scenes. Really, it's just a few scripts and some audio assets, and that's pretty much it. But all this other stuff are some standard assets that we're pulling in for the demo scenes. So we'll let that cook. Okay, so once everything is pulled in, we have our Footsteps Scene Designer Pro folder. And again, all we really need from this are some of the scripts that are in the editor here, the Footsteps script editor and the Terrain Sound script editor. Those are things that if you really want to go lightweight, you'd want to pull that. You could skip the scenes. You'd want to pull in these 3 scripts. There's like 1 script in the demo folder you do not need because that's for the demo. These are actually the 3 main scripts you're going to need to get this working in your project. And then you're going to want to pull in everything in the sounds folder. And this includes a bunch of sounds for the various types that are set up by default. So that's all you really need. All this other stuff, again, are some standard assets. All right, so let's get started. One of the first things you're going to want to do when you are setting up your project is to open up the Footsteps Scene Designer Pro User's Guide. Now, this document has everything you need to know about the 3 scripts that are included and how to set up and configure them. We're going to go hands-on with each one, but just so you have a high-level overview, the Footsteps script is the main workhorse, and you're going to put that on your character controller, and it's going to be responsible for detecting what is under your character as it moves about the screen and determining what sound to play. The Detect Water Collision script is used precisely for that, to detect whenever you enter a body of water. And when you do, it's going to send a message back to the Footsteps script and let it know that you just entered or exited water. And then the Terrain Sound script, you are going to attach to a terrain that you have in your scene, if you have one. And that's just going to be there to help you visually associate terrain textures to sounds. Now, the Detect Water Collision script and the Terrain Sound script, again, they have definitions here. This says allows the Footsteps script to detect entering and exiting water and how to use it. It says add to any water prefab in your scene. So it's pretty straightforward. You just add it and you're done. The Terrain Sound script is it says how to use, add it to a terrain object in your scene. So these are pretty much drag and drop, fire and forget, although actually you'll have to come back to this one and do a little configuration. It will give you some nice editor controls to make the association, but it's pretty darn easy. But first we're going to have to set up the Footsteps script, and that process is a little more involved, but don't worry, I'm going to take you through it right now. Let me move that off to the side. And we're going to start off with a scene here that I created, a very basic scene. I have a terrain, I have a plain game object, and I have a directional light. And that's all I really have. I've taken the liberty of assigning a texture to the terrain. I put a grassy looking texture, and I put like a wood type material on the game object. And I did that so we can see what's going on. You should have a basic scene to start with so that you can have something to add your character controller to. So the first step in setting up the Footsteps script is to add a character controller. And you can actually get one from Assets, Import Package, and get the character controller that Unity provides here. I've included one with my package. I've actually included that one. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go to First Person Character Controller, Prefabs, and just grab the controller and drag it and drop it in my scene. I'm also going to move it up and rotate it. And perhaps I'll move it back a little bit and just to the side. And let's see what that looks like. Yep, doesn't fall through the earth. I'm happy with that. Now that we have our character controller, we're going to need to add our footsteps script to it. So let's go to Scripts, Footsteps, and actually let us first select our character controller, scroll down here, and we're going to drag our footsteps script onto the bottom here. There we go. And that gives us some parameters that we can play with. The other thing we need to do is add tags. And I've already done that, but you go here and I've added them all here. The tags you need to add are broken glass, concrete, dirt, grass, gravel, leaves, puddles, sand, snow, water, wood, and unknown terrain. And note the spelling and punctuation. It has to be exactly like that because those tags are what is used to determine what type of surface you're standing on. Next, you need to click on any colliders you have in the scene. I'm sorry, any game objects you have in the scene, and make sure they have a collider. They can be a trigger, they cannot be a trigger, but you need to have a collider. And then you need to set the tag appropriately. So this is wood. Let's select wood. And that will tell the footsteps script that we're standing on wood. Terrains are handled a little differently, so let's go to our terrain, if you have one in your scene, and we're going to set that to unknown terrain, because that tells our scripts to handle the surface below it differently. And we're going to need to add our terrain sound script to our terrain object. And this is where we actually set the association of the sound to the texture. Our list of tags is here. And if I just leave it like this, broken glass, and I run the scene, our grass texture is going to sound like broken glass. And of course, from what we did before, this game object, this wooden game object, sounds like wood. But that doesn't seem right, so we're going to switch this to grass and play our grass sound as we run around on the grass. Now, it would be boring if we only had one terrain texture, so let's add a few textures to our scene. And you do that in the normal way. And let's get some sand. And I'm not sure, we'll put this at like 5. That sounds good. We'll add another texture. And let's see what looks good here. I think this is this looks like a good forest. It's like rocks and sticks. And for kicks, we'll add another texture. We'll add snow. Seems legit. And as you see, these 4 textures that we added got picked up by our terrain sound script, and now we can assign sounds to each of those. Pretty easy. So let's make that sand. Let's make this one the forest. I'm sorry, leaves. And this one's going to be snow. And let's run our scene. Let's not run our scene. Let's actually paint some of that first. So let's select some sand. And that's crazy big. And let's put some leaves over here. And let's put some snow back over here. And now let's run the scene. This is our leaves on the grass, over to the snow, back on the grass, into the sand. And so that's what the terrain sound script does. It really just gives you that ability to create associations really easy and change them, and you can do that on a per scene basis. So we've covered terrains and game objects. The last type of thing that you might run into is water. So let's create a little water in here and see how we handle that. Make a little swimming pool. Hopefully that's not too deep. And let's get a water plane. And we have a prefab here the Water Pro Daytime. Let's drag and drop that. Let's bring that up. That seems about right. And we're going to want to put a detect water collision script on that. So let's do that. Go to our scripts and detect water collisions. And this script is important because it allows us to essentially send a message to the footstep script when we break through this plane. Now you need a collider of some sort, and it needs to be set to its trigger. If one isn't set already, we will provide one for you. And it's probably better that you let the script provide one, in that then it can take advantage of the water depth property. We're going to also tag it to water, and we're going to run the script and see what that sounds like. Let's head over to our pool, and it sounds good. So let's take a look at the properties for the detect water collision script. There is only one, and it's a water depth. And let's try to understand what that does. Essentially, it sets the depth at which water collisions will be considered detected or undetected. And I'm going to run it. We have it set to 3 right now. And if you see, I pull this up, and so that's your depth of 3. And what I do is I center it on the horizontal surface, the plane here of the water. And so if you break that plane or go below it, you are considered in water. And that's important because if you have, a very deep pool of water, you're going to want to make sure that your player is triggering the water sound. So let's take a look at changing that variable. Let's make it 8, and let's rerun it because it gets set at runtime, and now you can see it's deeper. Alright, so I've switched my view. I've selected the first person controller, and we are looking at the footstep script and all the parameters that are associated or that can be adjusted by you. And let's take a look at them. We have the walking speed, and essentially this tells you, or this allows you to configure how frequently a footstep sound is played, and this is in seconds. So I have it set while walking in any direction to play a footstep sound every 0.6 seconds. The running speed is when you're running. So if you hold down the shift key in this case while you're moving in any direction, it's going to play them a little more frequently to give off the impression that your character is running. The step offset is how far in front of the next step, if you're moving forward, or behind you if you're moving backwards or to the side. It should be detecting the ground below. So right now, like if you have this set to 0, it's going to pretty much determine what's under you. And by making it 1 or 2 or whatever, it's going to, as you're moving forward, it's going to kind of look ahead and say, hey, what's the ground that you're probably going to be stepping on? So I have this set to 1. You could adjust it to suit your needs. If you find that it's not making, it doesn't sound properly for your game, you can change that offset. The default ground sound is the one that is played when the tag on a surface is not set. If it doesn't know what it is, if you didn't set it to wood or snow or whatever, it's undefined, it's going to play this whatever you set here. And I have it just by default set to broken glass. I could change it to dirt, and that's what's going to be played when it hits something that it doesn't know what it is. Only play default ground sound is an override, and if you select it or enable it, then whatever you have configured here in your default ground sound is going to be what is played on everything, regardless of how you have mapped it. So right now it's set to broken glass, and let's say if I want everything to sound like gravel, I can set gravel. I could run my scene, and now as I run around and move about, it doesn't matter what I have configured everything to. It's just going to play a gravel sound. So that's a quick and dirty way if you wanted to just override the behavior of a particular scene. You can just quickly set everything to one sound. So only use preloaded sounds is a way to override if you've done some customizations. And let's talk about what that means. So let's go over here to our custom sounds. And here for the various sound types that we currently support, you could actually override it. So if you don't like the default wood sound that we have, you can actually change that. We'll make this an array of 4. And by doing that, now we have 4 elements. And we're going to grab, again, we include a bunch of sounds, but I'm going to go to the first-person character controller, the standard asset, and they include a few audio clips. And so we're going to just override the wood sound with what they have. Now, this isn't supposed to be a wood sound, but we're going to demonstrate how this works. And if I want to override it, I have to untick the only use preloaded sounds. And by doing that, what's going to happen is anywhere that I don't have a sound, my own custom sound defined, it's going to play the standard sound. But here, it's going to override. So for wood, it's going to override it with these sounds. And let's hear what that sounds like. So that's the default sound for wood. Everything else, by the way, we didn't override it, so snow is going to sound like it. It's going to use the default sound. However, if I go over here and I say only use preloaded sounds, then even though I have these the wood populated with an alternate sound, it's not going to use that. It's going to use the preloaded sounds, the standard sounds. Run scene. And we're back to our original sounds for everything. Incidentally, the little red dots or little red arrows that you're seeing are good for you to figure out what is, what terrain is being considered for playing a particular sound. That's it. I think we've pretty much covered everything. As you can see, Footsteps Scene Designer Pro is a pretty quick and easy way to get Footsteps incorporated into your Unity project. I highly encourage you to visit the user's guide that's included in the package. There's a lot of great information in it, including a troubleshooting section. I also want to add that the first-person controller that I pulled in from the standard assets has been modified. You're going to have to make a similar modification because that character controller now includes its own footstep sounds, and it will kind of jack and override what I'm doing. So if you open up the first-person controller script, there's 3 lines of code you'll have to change. There's this one. You're just going to want to comment it out, play landing sound, play jump sound, and play footstep audio. And if you comment those out, you should be good to go. I've included a note in the user's guide that show you exactly which file and what lines you'll need to comment out for your reference. Anyway, I hope you like this video and you enjoy Footsteps Scene Designer Pro.